If you thought that by playing Elden Ring you could escape the clutches of For Honor, unfortunately, you're wrong. Recreating For Honor in other games isn't something new to my channel. I've done it twice before and was actually going to do it in Dark Souls 3 as well, but I just never did. It's just a content creator thing where we abandon projects for no real reason. I've actually been working on this since Elden Ring released, and after being afflicted with IRL Scarlet Rot, I'm finally back and happy to share with you 9 different For Honor builds that can be recreated in Elden Ring, and vary wildly in accuracy, viability, and of course fun factor. Also, quick disclaimer, I'm currently out of town and needed to record several clips on my gaming laptop, which can barely run Elden Ring on the lowest graphical settings, so please don't mind any sudden dips in graphical quality or frame rate. Let's start things off with Conqueror because they're one of the easiest heroes to recreate and also happens to have the most customization options. You can get the flail and a good heater shield within minutes of setting foot in Limgrave, and when you inevitably hop over to the Caelid farm, make sure you grab the Vulgar Militia Greaves from these guys because knee pads. Now the rest of the build is actually largely up to you. You can change your heater or kite shield as you please, and use any surcoat from the various soldiers roaming each region. They and the other little soldiers around them also drop helmets that are quite similar to Conqueror's, despite being open-faced. If you want to cover your face, then just grab the Great Helm from the merchant in Southern Caelid. Now this one's a bit more of an out there option, but I think the Marionette Soldier Helm also kinda works. Totally optional, and actually not until later in the game, is also the Zamor bracelets to add some chains to your wrists. On your shield of choice, you can keep the parry skill, but are you really playing Conqueror if you're not spamming shield bash? Now in my opinion, the warrior class is your best start for Conqueror, as you're just 2 dexterity points away from being able to wield the flail. I joined up with Freeze, who was using Conqueror to test out some For Honor ganks in Elden Ring, and it was quite the experience.
Nice!
I'm bash option selecting.
I'll be posting my perspective soon, but you can find his by clicking in the corner now or checking the link in the description. Now alongside his Conqueror, I tried 2 different builds. I tried Black Prior and Raider. I'll be making separate step-by-step guides on how to make both of them because I think they work really well in Elden Ring, but until then I'm going to touch on them briefly.
Actually worked that time.
In For Honor, Black Prior's main gimmick is countering everything but a guard break, and I wanted to try to emulate that as best as possible in Elden Ring. Now some corners had to be cut for visual accuracy, but I believe I've created a build that has great potential in both PvE and PvP. Now, Raider, on the other hand, I believe works better in PvE, largely because FromSoft has buffed everything in the game except for axes. On the bright side though, this build lets the crafting system shine and you'll be able to endlessly toss fire flasks at all your problems. You could also use the fire flasks and the same helm for fellow Viking Warlord. In fact, you could actually use the whole cadence set. This armor drops from the sellswords roaming Limgrave. There's plenty of them north of this site of grace. However, I thought the iron gauntlets and leather trousers were more accurate, and you can purchase them from this merchant here in the Weeping Peninsula. This guy also sells the round shield that you'll need, and you can pair it with your straight sword of choice. I went with the weathered straight sword as it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because just like in For Honor, Warlord's biggest strength is gravity. The Shield Crash Ash of War can be found here in the Altus Plateau, and yes, I definitely think I'm going to try some PvP videos with this. I think that using the smaller shield with Shield Crash, it's going to catch a lot of people off guard, but we'll have to wait and see. As the stats you'll be prioritizing are Vigor, Endurance, and probably a little bit of Strength so that you can still deal damage with your sword. Hero or Vagabond are your best options for a starting class. You can also totally cosplay as the Super Roman Bros in Elden Ring. Starting off as Centurion, the Twin Helm can be earned by following Dee's questline, or if you'd rather the Bullgoat Helm from helping Patches at the Volcano Manor. Both work great because they have faces like many of Centurion's helmets do. Radahn's chest piece and the Greaves can be purchased after defeating the General, and I recommend either the Guardian Bracers or Landell Knight Gauntlets. You can swap between the two depending if you want more elemental or physical defense. Now some people have told me the Elden Lord set looks better for Centurion. However,
I disagree.
I can safely say that combat is very interesting pairing the Regalia of Eokid with a Caestus or Caestus, however you pronounce it, in your offhand. It's very, very unorthodox. You've got several options for an Ash of War on the fist. Kick is pretty self-explanatory. If you could mod it or replace the sound file so every time you use Braggart's Roar you just yell Incredibilis, I think that would be very fitting. But you also can't go wrong with just parrying. Now, For Honor's Gladiator was literally inspired by our history's gladiators, so the easiest way to cosplay him in Elden Ring would be to grab the gladiator armor from the guys that used to be in front of the Colosseum here before I decided to set the world on fire. Yeah, unless someone drops the armor for you, you can't get this armor after killing Malekith, so be careful. However, not all hope is lost. You could change the material color by killing the rotten versions of these dudes spread out in the consecrated snowfields. For both versions of the Duelist set, the unaltered version is cloaked, and while I don't think it resembles For Honor's Gladiator, it's perfectly fine to use it for the extra defense and poise. I also added the Zamor bracelets to give Glad some more shackles. On that note though, swapping out the chest piece for the Zamor armor lets you more accurately recreate Gladiator's chest piece and pauldron. As for weapons, you're simply going to use the buckler which you can get from Gatekeeper Gostock, paired with either Mohg's Trident or the one dropped by the Iron Virgins in the Volcano basement. The choice is really yours as to what to use, both deal fire damage and build up bleed. I think Mohg's looks cooler, but the Girandol is lighter, faster, deals higher base damage, and has a more fitting ability. You'll want plenty of stamina and probably the Turtle Talisman to accurately represent Centurion and Gladiator's green pool, as well as whatever necessary stats to buff your weapons. Now unfortunately, as happy as I am with all the previously mentioned recreations, I'm going to end this video with 3 that I am not as happy with. First off, Warden. There's not much I could do to recreate Warden, I'm gonna be honest. I mean, grabbing the longsword was a great start, since it even has the square-off ability that resembles Warden's top guard. From here, however, it's mainly downhill. I tried the Iron Helm to recreate some of Warden's newer, more revealing helmets, but of course you can also just use the Great Helm, as it's literally the same helmet. I paired it with the Altered Vagabond Knight Armor, Bloodhound Gauntlets, and Mausoleum Greaves. However, this didn't really scream Warden to me, so I took some inspiration from the average Warden player in For Honor and colored my armor black. I removed the plume from the Knight's Cavalry Helm and swapped out the chest piece for either the Redmane or Gelmir Knight Armor. It's a bit better, I guess. Now, if you want to stick with the build, two-handing the longsword works pretty well, but if you want more reach, I wouldn't blame you for switching to a greatsword. You may also consider speccing into Faith for some heals and buffs, kind of like Second Wind and Morale Booster, but you can also use the Golden Vow Ash of War so you don't need to put as many points into Faith. Similarly, I'm not overly happy with what I came up with for Warmonger. I used the Bloodhound set with the Knight Helm, and you can wield either a Flamberge or a Zweihander. Personally, I preferred one-handing the Zweihander, it looked a little bit closer to Warmonger's moveset. Ultimately though, choice is yours. The Poisonous Mist skill isn't actually a terrible way to recreate her corruption feats, especially when paired with the Kindred of Rot's talisman, but again, it didn't stand out to me as a recognizable Warmonger cosplay. For both Warden and Warmonger, I think Vagabond is your best option for a starting class. Lastly, I tried Peacekeeper. Now, until Miyazaki releases the DS3 Armor Pack DLC so I can use the Fallen Knight Helm, I'm stuck with the Banished Knight Helm. I tried several different sets with this helmet and ultimately settled on the Altered Depraved Perfumer robe with the leather gloves and page trousers. Now obviously the Depraved Perfumer robe and page trousers, you get them from the Depraved Perfumer and page enemies respectively. The leather gloves, you have to commit the cardinal sin of murdering patches. Keep that in mind if you want an accurate cosplay. In For Honor, Peacekeeper wields a short sword and dagger, and in Elden Ring, you can power stance with 2 weapons from the same class. Unfortunately, straight swords and daggers are separate classes. If I wanted to use a straight sword and a dagger, this is what it would look like. I settled on the parrying dagger in the offhand, while main-handing this dagger that I'm gonna mispronounce. Using a long and short sword actually worked really well, especially with quickstep, but Peacekeeper's an assassin, and pairing the critical hit bonus with the French dagger and the dagger talisman seemed really fitting for the hero. You can infuse both or at least one of the daggers with bleed and keep a crossbow in your back pocket to replicate her tier 3, and you've got what I believe is the closest you can get to Peacekeeper from For Honor. Of those 3 last builds, I would say Peacekeeper is the one I'm most happy with because I was able to bring over so many mechanics from For Honor, but again, this doesn't really stand out to me as a very recognizable cosplay. So yeah, as great as some heroes carried over both in terms of looks and mechanics, there were definitely some that fell a little flat. The good news is I still have plenty more For Honor builds in Elden Ring, so aside from the other meme and joke builds like Sonic, expect at least one more showcase video like this on top of dedicated videos for Blackprior, Raider, and PvP videos for plenty of the other heroes, including my takes on Elden Ring Shigoki and Lawbringer. Again, make sure you go subscribe to Freeze's channel and check out his video on our For Honor Gank Squad. I'd like to thank you for watching and say thank you to my Patreon supporters helping keep the channel going, especially Shadow and TheRookieVA. Have a good one, and I'll see you on the next video.